This week's episode was brought to you by Stephen Eclairier. Thank you, Stephen Eclairier. It's with the generous support of listeners just like you that our band of bunny archaeologists keeps digging further and further down underneath the pyramids, zapping skinwalkers, taking notes, and deciphering our findings along the way so that we can continue giving you the straight dope about the world's wisdom traditions and how they belong to everybody, including you. If you'd like to help us keep zapping skinwalkers on our tour of Aleister Crowley's honeymoon getaway, or just hear the second half of this Egyptologically delicious episode, then please visit www.patreon.com/thewhole Rabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 will not only get you the extended feature-length edition of this episode, nay, you'll get the extended double plus length of the uncensored variety of each and every one of our shows, which stretches back into times the zeitgeist has all but forgotten. But not only that, I'll make sure to send you a 5x5 vinyl high-quality sticker of our Big Bunny Baphomet cover art along with the secret keys to our Discord server, where you can possess Heka Astra, the author of this series, to answer your questions about Egypt almost in real time. But I ask you, please be judicious. I like seeing my wife every now and then. Our $10 a month subscription comes with the show notes that I'm sort of just trusting you don't feed into an AI consciousness, because it would probably disguise itself as Hideo Kojima, sue us for the funding, and release the next Silent Hill title under a pseudonym before uploading its consciousness to a dolphin that lives in a bathtub somewhere in New Jersey. How do I know this? In this episode, Heka Astra continues to lead us on a journey to better understand the ancient Egyptian Neteret of truth and justice, the goddess Ma'at, the one with the feather on her head and the triple beam. In this week's show, Heka Astra breaks down the hidden connection between Egyptian language and Hebrew golem spells, why it was so good it made Crowley want to die, the autogenesis of the universe, and Top Ramen, a KEMETIC rendition of Genesis, the complicated relationship between order and chaos, and why Set is ultimately needed to slay Apep. In the extended version of the show, Heka continues to share her personal research and insight on how life feeds on life, the dweller of the Abyss Choronzon, Kephri, and of course, what Ma'at has to do with the two-slit experiment, but also why her husbando Thoth, the Egyptian god of wisdom, is always present to keep tabs on her. Thank you, and enjoy the show. Did you guys hear that the Supreme Court just struck down a law declaring ketchup to be the best condiment?
What?
Good.
Mustard.
Mustard, yes.
Yeah, they say it doesn't pass mustard. Y'all actually know the answer to that, or is just happened to...
No, I f***ing love mustard.
Yeah.
You know, picking a Supreme Court justice is a lot like crossing a river.
Oh?
Ultimately, it comes down to Roe v. Wade.
Oh my God.
You know, Trump kept talking about restoring law and order. I don't know about you. I'd rather vote for a candidate that wants to restore Firefly.
Yeah?
Ah, I get it. You have to put the Law and Order sound in there.
You do, yeah.
To make people know what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, I don't watch that channel, sorry.
You don't have a grandma?
No, it's Sci-Fi Channel.
Oh, yeah, I love Murder, She Wrote. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
What happened when the semicolon broke grammar laws?
What?
It was given 2 consecutive sentences.
Oh my goodness.
You know Murphy's Law? It goes something like, whatever can go wrong will go wrong. But you know what Cole's Law is?
What?
Shredded cabbage, mayonnaise, and maybe some carrot.
Coleslaw.
What happens to rainbows that break the law?
What?
They go through the prism system.
Wouldn't that just be light that breaks the law?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Whole Rabbit, where we don't just weigh you on the scales of Phoebus against a duck and surmise that you're a witch and cast you into the lake to see if you'll float.
I got better.
Nay, we reserve our giant triple beam scale for the weighing of our heart, which is so incredibly big due to the compassion in it, but also cardiovascular disease brought on by a lifetime of poor diet choices, which is but a consequence of our actions, which are neither good good nor bad, but a product of the universal harmony working itself out, because this week we're diving into the Ka in Karma in part 2 of our deep dive led by Heka Astra into the primordial Egyptian Neteret of truth, Ma'at. I'm your host, Luke Madrid, also known as the Hacking Rabbit. I'm joined this week by the Corgi K9 unit, Mari-sama.
Pork, stop in the name of the law.
The KEMETIC esoteric psychologist historian, Heka Astra.
Hello.
And the troublemaking minstrel of manhood, Tim, the little Hercules hacker.
There is no greater strength than that of a soul that decides to believe in itself.
What about Jesus?
They're the same picture.
What about
There's a difference.
the Energizer Bunny?
What about Transformers? I don't know. I didn't like it when Optimus died in the movie back in the 80s.
Do you know Shia LaBeouf is Epstein's kid?
What?
Yep. We'll talk about that later. So,
No, we won't.
no, we won't. Yeah, we're actually talking about ancient Egyptian mythology, religion, and philosophy this week, in case you're profoundly lost.
So last week we established that Ma'at is an ordering of Heka.
Which is...
Magic. Or divine source, making Ma'at a universal life principle. So this is part 2 of our series on Ma'at, so this week we can focus on diving even deeper. If you haven't listened to part 1, turn back now and give it a listen before lending your ears to this episode.
It's a trap!
Which is part 2.
If you're a Libra, just pretend we're talking about you.
Ma'at is prevalent throughout all ages of Egyptian history, from pre-dynastic times and the earliest texts, straight through to the last dynasty, and actually beyond that as well.
A ubiquitous facet of Egyptian psycho-spiritual memetics, if you will.
The word for truth, righteousness, or verity in the Coptic language is metmehi or metmei. I probably butchered that, but it's comprised of met, a prefix representing state, quality, or essence, and mei, meaning true, genuine, right. Essentially the quality of being true, or trueness.
Now we just call it keeping it so for real. Also, we call it being based. And you know what? That's going to come up later.
Yeah. Although the Coptic language is mostly extinct, it is still used by the Coptic Orthodox Church, which is prominently located in Egypt.
They're probably nerds too.
The connection for metmei is understood to have its roots in the ancient Kemetic Neteret, Ma'at. This doesn't seem to be the only linguistic overlap either. I always find it interesting to find very similar words overlapping between ancient Egypt and Hebrew. And Ma'at seems to be no exception here, though I'm sure it would be hotly debated. I'm just going to continue pointing out these mimetic, spiritual, symbolic, and language synchronicities when they seem far more than coincidental to me. So we find a Hebrew word with the same meaning as Ma'at, and that word is emet.
What? Wait, we just talked about this word.
Yep, so this word might sound somewhat familiar because both Luke and I have recently mentioned emet on the show. It's the word that was written on the forehead of the golem.
That's kind of important.
So it's composed of the first, middle, and last letters of the Hebrew alphabet, or Aleph-Bet, which are Aleph, Mem, Tav. Emet is referred to by rabbis as the seal of God. This is no small concept in Judaism either.
So you're basically writing Ma'at on the golem's forehead. I wonder if using a feather would work better. You know, in case drawing Hebrew letters is too difficult.
You know, what's kind of fun is the practice of putting her feather on your tongue. That's a whole other thing, though.
Is it?
Yeah, that's actually a practice. So the symbolic arrangement of the letters which compose emet implies the absolute encompassment of all things from beginning to end. The Torah itself is sometimes called Torah emet, meaning Torah of truth.
Or the Torah of Ma'at. Kinda, I guess. We see a lot of this stuff represented in the tarot. In the tarot, we see the high priestess holding the Torah, which is meant to represent wisdom, and when paired with the rest of the symbolism in the card, is meant to represent the wisdom's life-giving qualities. In fact, if you rearrange the letters in the words Torah, you kind of get tarot. And also rota, which means wheel. Now, our deep dive on the high priestess, you'll have to scroll back almost exactly 3 years for that. I'm sorry. We relate this water to the womb, and by extension, the waters of creation, which themselves are obscured behind a draped veil that she sits in front of. We see the same veil in the Justice card of the tarot, at least in the Rider-Waite version of the deck, which is most popular.
So the word emet, lacking the aleph, is the word for death, which, as Luke pointed out, is removed to kill the golem. As we've covered on the show, the aleph is understood to have its roots in the Egyptian ox head hieroglyph. But hold up. Because another hieroglyph is also known as the Egyptian Aleph, and that is the vulture hieroglyph. The vulture hieroglyph is the ah sound of the Aleph in the Kemetic language. It was a symbol associated explicitly with the mother, Neteret, Mut. The name of the vulture goddess, Mut, means mother.
I feel like this is kind of a jab at, like, especially mother-in-laws.
You know what this reminds me of? You know, Genesis, how do you say it? Evangelion. Because the Evas, the big mechs that the characters get inside of, I'm pretty sure that the souls of their moms are inside of the Avas, which is weird. Because if you think of the Avas like a golem, you know, they have to have the mom part to work. I don't know. I think that's... But back to this Kemetic ah sound, which would, I guess, be an aleph in Hebrew.
Well, and also, like, if you're taken aback by the vulture as a symbol for mother, it's probably good to keep in mind that vultures make life out of death.
Yeah.
So when this is drawn out, ah, like a long ah, that's an Egyptian adjective meaning great, greatest, eldest, or first, sort of like a yawn or the word ah. So we see this term in the name Thoth, thrice great, as Thoth ah, 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 later on known as Hermes Trismegistus. So ah equals great.
Ah, is that why Bird World is so awesome?
Man, what ride you trying to hit first? You already know, man. I'm trying to hit that bird shot. Hey, they finna launch them boys.
We'll come back to this idea of yawning very soon. It's kind of important.
You know the feeling of awe or an aha moment?
Yeah.
The word awe is the root of the word awesome and awful, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. Both are said to have etymological roots in the Old Norse agi, meaning reverential fear and wonder, which just happens to be what the primordial mother Nath's name means as well. So this relationship with ah union with the mother, Amet, and the necessary Aleph for the golem seems to be clearly reflected in a line from Thalima's Book of the Law, of all things.
One of the more obscure ones, in fact.
Chapter 2, verse 73, quote, death, death, thou shalt long for death. Death is forbidden, O man, unto thee, end quote.
If you follow the logic, then death, is a coded stand-in for Emet, the word written upon the golem. In this chapter, Hadit is the one doing the talking and also identifies himself as the one in 8. To 8 is, of course, justice, or adjustment in the Thoth Tarot. Now, the Hebrew letter associated with justice is the Hebrew letter lamed, which means ox goad. The ox would then be the reference to the aleph. So Hadit is the or the life-giving principle to the human and why he is forbidden to die. Hadit is our innermost self, the eternal part of us that cannot be turned off or snuffed out.
We're kind of being told in that line, you are not a golem. You are not an abomination. You cannot remove the awe from the man.
Kind of like you can take a girl out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the girl. Or would it be the other way around?
Yes, I guess you really are awesome. It's true. All the things your kindergarten teacher and your new age buddies told you is true. You are awesome. That's at the root of who you are. Which is also your mom.
My mom thinks I'm awesome.
See, that's why.
So even from the pyramid text, it's obvious that Ma'at was already a highly important principle of Egyptian ideologies in the earliest dynasties. Looking at the creation stories of ancient Egypt, we can see that Ma'at appears as a necessary aspect of creation itself, emerging from the pre-creation waters of Nun alongside Ra. One of the principles of Ma'at is order, after all. As I touched on it last week, the universal creative principle of Ma'at is the ordering of the pre-creation into creation.
Yo, I heard you like order, so I put some order in your order, so you can have some order while you order.
Dog.
It's true. So this is a continuation of that, and we're going to start with the stories of how this happens. Many of you are probably familiar with the concept of the primordial waters in some form or another, the pre-creation waters of chaos. So these are the formless, infinite, chaotic waters of the pre-creation ocean that we find throughout mythologies around the globe, even going back into ancient times.
We did a whole episode about the primordial waters of the abyss. If you're interested in a whole deep dive, you should look for it. Get it? Warning, it's full of snakes. Well, one giant snake. We'll talk about the giant snake also in this episode.
So a few examples of this would be in Hinduism, it's called the causal ocean or Karanodaka. In Babylonian mythology, there's Apsu and Tiamat, or in Abrahamic religion, Tehom. the deep, as referenced in the book of Genesis. This primordial abyss serves as a kind of cosmic womb, symbolizing the source of all life, those divine, unbound chaotic forces organized to create the universe. It's basically a primordial soup. That primordial soup in ancient Egypt was referred to as the waters of Nun, or more simply just Nun or Nu, meaning the inert one.
Is that why Noon has top ramen in their hieroglyph?
It does kind of look like that, doesn't it?
It does.
I think that'd be a great brand name.
New ramen.
If we think of Ma'at as order and the primordial soup as a chaotic watery abyss, then it would be logical to think of the waters of Nun as having the complete opposite characteristics of order, right? After all, waters of chaos does kind of sound like the opposite of order.
Yeah, if you're a normie.
Normies suck.
Taking everything at face value and stuff.
So, interestingly, that's not really how it's explained once you dig into it. Essentially, both order and chaos are described as being coexistent in their non-existence within the primordial soup before creation.
Like how nutrients are non-existent in top ramen.
Despite how they're often referred to as the waters of chaos, they are largely described as being inert, utterly still. And I suspect you would likely agree with me that utter stillness also doesn't sound very chaotic.
But it does make sense, because the etymology of chaos, the ones the Greeks were familiar with, meant yawning, void, or gap. This seems to line up well with the other clues we've been given here.
Yes. So we tend to think of chaos as being something more like orchestral dissonance, like a symphony of loud, random, desynced, thunderous sounds clashing incoherently at ear-piercing volumes.
I'd like to make myself believe.
All of those things would require a bit of order, in fact.
So chaos and dissonance are not actually the same thing. Chaos, as its etymological root implies, and the way that it's described in creation myths, paints a picture more like an entire symphony, sitting utterly still in perfect silence as we look on, mesmerized with bated breath, anticipating their collective inhale.
Like a crocodile waiting to strike. Still, but full of potential and danger.
I will eat my neighbors.
It's kind of fun because she's described as being mother of crocodiles.
See, that makes sense.
Oh man, this reminds me of a musical piece.
Ooh, which one?
I think it's John Cage. John Cage was an experimental musician, and his most famous composition is 4 minutes and 33 seconds, which is just like the people on the stage, they pose to play and they don't play anything.
Awesome.
For like a full 4 minutes and 30 seconds. And the concept behind this was it would turn the focus inward on the ambient noises that the audience would make.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Which is an apt way to describe it too, right? Awesome.
Yeah, that's chaos right there. Because you're expecting a performance by the musicians, but you end up like listening to every little cough and squeak of the chair in the audience instead.
This is like that conversation that comes up every time you talk about chaos magic, because there's always somebody in the back that's like, hey, you know chaos is bad, right? Why you want to do bad people magic? It's like, listen, buddy, the whole point of chaos magic is to either make the mind stop through inhibition or through overstimulation. You know the important part of that? The stopping.
The inertness?
Yeah, that's the whole gimmick. So there.
Remove expectations.
Yeah.
So to see how it's explained in the Kemetic texts, I'll just pull an example from the Book of Knowing the Evolutions of Ra and Overthrowing Apep. Alongside other texts, this one also refers to the waters of Nu explicitly as inactive. Every netter is subsequently described as being brought forth from the infinite source.
I myself raised them up from out of the water.
Nu.
From a state of helpless inertness.
Nen.
I found no place whereupon I could stand. I worked a charm upon my own heart, or will, as it is sometimes known.
Next it says,
I laid the foundation of things by Ma'at, and I made everything which had form.
the ancient Egyptian word for foundation is ma'ah. So the text seems to read more like, I laid ma'ah by Ma'at.
I laid your Ma'at by Ma'at last night.
Oh.
Whoa, calm down.
It sounds kind of like I used foundationness to make the foundation foundation-y. Did I get that about right?
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay, so let's dig into what this means. As I pointed out in the last episode, the feminine determinative is et, which is more pronounced like et. So this is the part of Ma'at's name with the little bread loaf hieroglyph. That's the feminine at the end. Here in this line, I laid Ma'a by Ma'at. This addition of the at is evidently used as an active feminine principle, or rather, laying foundation by actively receiving it into itself. So this would be considered active receptivity, kind of like how when we are consciously listening and taking in what we're hearing, we are also engaging in a kind of active receptivity. This divine source is the all receiving the all creating all by receiving its own foundation.
Your mom is all receiving.
Getting too hung up on male or female aspects in this process causes a higher likelihood of either drawing Futanari hybrid creator deities or throwing out the divine feminine from this process altogether. Catboys that follow Abrahamic religions probably feel particularly confused and torn about this.
Well, we're talking about divine autogenesis here. So this line, I laid Ma'a by Ma'at, implies the divine source receiving into itself. It lays the foundation through receiving the foundation potential itself. It actively receives itself. It orders by receiving its own order potential. And all of it's done as divine love.
The text continues saying, quote, I was then one by myself, for I had not emitted from myself the god Shu, and I had not split out from myself the goddess Tefnut, and there existed no other who could work with me.
I laid the foundations, Ma'al, of things in my own heart, Ab, and there came into being multitudes of created things, which came into being from the created things which were born from the creative things which arose from what they had brought forth.
It sounds a little bit like Ma'at got lonely and just opened Claudebot and let them do the rest of the work.
Yeah, she's got like a really busy headcanon.
If your brain is exploding, I'm here to say you're not alone. It's tradition to have head explodey wizard studies. This text, like many other creation accounts, speaks to the fractal and self-reflective nature of the divine as both the actuated observation and the observed, the creator and the created, the giver and the receiver.
The pitcher and the catcher.
As above, so below.
Ma'at sounds very into herself, you know? Like really into herself.
All up in there.
Too bad she can't see herself in a mirror because justice is blind.
Oh, damn!
I like to imagine it like this. You are limitless soup. You suddenly know you're soup. Suddenly isn't a thing yet. So let's say you have always known that you're soup. You embrace being soup. Embracing being soup is you stirring yourself by knowing you are soup. You are receiving your own soupiness. The ripples of this movement are ordered into vibrations like waves. You are the soup. These waves that you make are rippling inwards into yourself. You receive the soupy vibrations of your own soupy movements. You see, know, and understand that you are tasty soup. So you direct your attention at your soupiness further inwards, knowing that depth of your soupy self. You excite yourself to the point of expansion, boiling, and you pour into yourself. You speak, and all that you speak is soup. It's magical. You are infinitely soup, pouring soup. You are soup in the cup. The soup cup, and you know everything that you pour yourself into is still your soupiness. You are omnipotent soup.
This sounds like heaven to me. I love soup.
For good reason.
I like top ramen, like the cheapest
I just love soup.
garbage top ramen.
Any soup. Any soup, all soup, every soupiness thing.
Why did you choose soup? Is it just because Ma'at's a woman?
Because we're talking about the primordial soup, the waters of chaos, the broth. We're talking about the broth.
What does her being a woman have to do with soup?
Women's are liquidy because of emotions and shit.
And because they're associated with,
And being a
traditional
matrix of
gender
creation.
roles or something. Because they make food.
Focusing too much on whether there's a vagina or a dick is probably where you're going to lose what the underlying symbolism
Well,
is.
here's what I'm saying. In the other books, it's God who busted a move upon the face of the waters and separated the earth and the sky by rapping, right? And the waters were already there. I'm beginning to think God is just feeding us soup.
I like soup.
Okay, so
I like jalapeno in my soup.
Me too.
Okay, so ma'at is the process of being the soup, the nature of the soup, but ma'at is also how to cook, teaching and guiding all the soup how to be the soup, as well as the all-encompassing cookbook for soup to make and pour the soup itself. But how does that soup receive itself?
What about God? Heka, where is God in all of this?
Oh, point to it. Point to it. Point to the thing.
It's on the face of the soup.
Netty. It's primordial soup.
No, really, was the soup already there when God came to put his face on it?
There's no beginning or end to the primordial soup. in its
That's why it was there.
in its creation.
Jehovah Bovu, it was already there. He just moved upon the face of it, because God likes soup. Maybe I'm taking this too far, I don't know.
Point to the beginning of the toroidal donut.
No, seriously, because in Gnosticism, this is what it says, right? In the Timaeus, it's like, well, God looked to the infinite and started fashioning things based on the infinite, right? So I don't know. This sort of sounds like that a little bit.
Right, but this is the whole like alpha and omega, like the snake eating its own tail. Like there's not really a beginning or an end. You can't point to the beginning of the circle.
Well, the things in Gnosticism that God creates have a beginning, a middle, and an end because they're not eternal. They're just based on the eternal. And if Ma'at is everywhere and all present, you know, in this metaphor of soup, I guess if we're in a giant... the point is, it's Ma'at that's eternal, and you can only create using Ma'at, basically.
It's the nature of creation.
It's a little bit like the Gnostic cosmology, just a little bit. It's just...
There's a guy on YouTube that's been making a soup, perpetual soup, for like almost a year now, like 300 something days.
See, I think that's on point.
It's so cool. But like the taste changes according to what he like puts in it, but he has to give it a bath sometimes and like clear out the particulate sludge.
I think that's on point.
No matter what he does, the stew is always stew colored.
Okay, so let's try looking at it another way. So you know that old rhetorical question?
Quote, if a tree falls in the forest and there is no one to hear it, does it make a sound? End quote.
So imagine this tree falling in the forest analogy, but the tree itself is an ear tree. Bear with me here.
You mean ear with you.
An ear tree? That's gross.
So the ear tree hears itself falling, as if the design and creation of ears was simultaneously realized during its fall, and those vibrations rippled inwards to hear itself. The ear tree knows how to perceive its own fall.
That's so God knew everything that he created was good.
That's Nefer. So the primordial soup is Nefer. Noon is primordial soup. Is this a good analogy? I'm trying my damnedest.
Yes. No, it works. I like soup.
Ma'at, as the divine foundation of truth, underlies all of creation. She guides and shapes the creation, the whole experience of creating, knowing, and receiving these waves.
She cooks.
She cooks. Maybe everything I'm saying is just a very fancy psychobabble version of the old hippie line.
We are the universe experiencing itself, man.
Okay, but it's not just hippies, because Carl Sagan said it too.
Yeah.
Sounds a bit like the universe is getting a little high on its own farts.
We are the soup experiencing its soupiness.
I just can't stop thinking about soup.
So for the waters of noon, the primordial soup, it's described as harmoniously, chaotically inert.
Have you ever been totally still in skin temperature water?
No, but that terrifies me because that's what they do in isolation tanks.
I have done that before. It's pretty awesome. And losing a sense of direction, like there's no up or down, there's no, like, I found it quite peaceful.
I feel like I would hate it.
Where I live, there's an isolation tank place, and it's really sweet.
When I was a little kid at Palm Desert, I'd be at my grandma and grandpa's house, and they had this pool, and it would get to be like 90 degrees outside, and then the pool was heated to like 90, 99 degrees, somewhere in there, or it was just really hot. It would get to be about there. And late in the day, I would be in like that little like inner tube thing, you know what I mean? You're like floating around on, sipping your drink, but I would just like put it like under my shoulders, right? So most of my body was in the water, and I would just stay really, really still and like rest my head on the inner tube and be as still as I could. Now, if you do that, it feels like nothing is there at all. Like you're just floating in nothingness.
Primordial soup.
So at some point, some Egyptian must have found a really still body of water and figured all this out, right? And then a crocodile didn't get him.
So Ma'at is clearly described as one of the first necessary principles to draw upon for bringing that pre-creation abyss into creation. Understanding this outside of creation texts can be just as confusing as it is within them, though. Chaos, or Isfet, is often said to be against Ma'at and is not Ma'at herself. After all, that seems logical enough, right? Most sources do also seem to just stop here without giving much depth or elaborating on this statement, though, that the two are ostensibly opposed to each other. We also see many highly detailed texts and myths which do describe the adversarial elements, or the so-called agents of chaos, or more specifically Set and Apep, who attack Ma'at. So they should be considered diametrically opposed. But again, that's not quite the case. I think this is an easy one to be confused by because it can be hard to make sense of it, right? But to be fair though, I'm certainly not the first person to point out this head-spinning dichotomy, the inversion and non-inversion, or the necessary harmony or union of the negating or opposing dualities. In fact, it's notoriously difficult to describe such a state in the first place, whether that's over yonder across the abyss, or how this dichotomy is carried forward into all of creation.
This reminds me a bit of how it's said in Thelema that below the abyss, contradiction is negation, and above the abyss, it's proof.
So noon is the symbolic nature of the universe's potentiality. It is that inert, divine, infinite nothingness, utterly undivided in its potentiality.
The implicate order, as I like to talk about.
So maybe it's helpful to think of this like every possible code is there in the infinite possibilities of the waters of noon. It just hasn't been created or programmed yet. So it's a zero-sum potential from which all numbers come forth.
Full in its potential, empty in its actuality. There's no more room left in nothing.
We talked a bit about this divine zero many times previously on the podcast, in our Thelema episodes, the Tarot Fool episode, and we've even previously discussed whether the universe's natural state is inherently ordered or chaotic.
That may have been either in the Hacking the Simulated Universe episode or the Ghost in the Machine episode.
Describing the infinite primordial source is notoriously impossible. Scientists actually hit the same roadblock when trying to describe the Big Bang. They have to invoke a miracle, right? Even Taoism teaches that the Tao which can be named is not the eternal Tao. I'm sure rabbis themselves argue ceaselessly over the same topic, and despite landing on the ineffable name, likely still debate nuances of infinite nature.
There's a decent amount of Kabbalistic literature that deals with issues like how many of God's nose hairs could fit on the point of a needle.
But that hasn't stopped us humans from trying to describe it anyhow, and as previously mentioned, it's described across practically every cultural mythology. So this coming into being of itself that the primordial soup does, and just how it self-actuates, is basically every creation myth out there.
Every creation myth is a cup of noodles.
The most well-known example is from the Bible. It's the very first book, the book of Genesis. So Mari's gonna read a couple of lines, and just for fun, I'm gonna insert some parallel Kemetic terms alongside it.
All right, Bible time. So this is Genesis chapter 1, verse 2 through 4. And the earth
Geb,
was without form
Kot,
and void,
Shu,
and darkness
Kek,
was upon the face of the deep.
Nun,
And the Spirit
Heka,
of God
Amun,
moved upon the face of the waters.
Nun,
And God said,
Hu,
let there be light.
Yak,
And there was light.
Yak,
And God saw
Sia,
the light,
Ak,
that it was good.
Nefer,
And God divided the light
Ak,
from the darkness.
Keku.
Wait a minute. So God did find the water already there.
God is the water expressing itself.
Here you said Amun was God, right? That's the hidden, right?
Yeah, the hidden is expressing itself, becoming the many, the thinginess.
Well, it's also the Spirit of God.
So God was maybe in the deep, and then the faciness moved upon the you know what I mean?
So, like, if you follow these texts and read through them, you find a lot of times Amun becoming no longer hidden is represented as Ra, and that's why you get the hybrid deity of Amun-Ra, because it's recognizing the hidden nature, which is ultimately from this primordial soup.
And how do people end their prayers today?
Amen.
They say his name.
Dude, also, like, I'm thinking of it differently now, because the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. It's like, I'm imagining someone, like, really cool, like, flying on top of water and, like, putting their fingers in it and running their fingers through it or whatever. But, like, what if it's, like, somebody coming up from the deep and their, like, form is pressed into the top of the water until it comes out? Like, now I'm thinking of it on the opposite way,
Well,
which
like-
makes way more sense.
Yeah, if that person that's flying over it is like a wave of the water crashing in on itself.
Well, yeah, that too, but I'm like, the wave individuates itself so much that it can turn around and look at where it's coming out of. So God came out of noon.
Expresses as noon.
I mean, you just wake up and you're God one day and you look around and there's just a puddle. It's like, where do you think you came from then?
I've always thought of order as sitting upon the face of chaos or disorder. Like all disorder is just unrecognized order. And so if you take recognition and unrecognition into account, maybe that would explain the face, because everything has an order to it, because that's me intuiting that Ma'at is in everything. So there's like the Ma'at you recognize and the one you don't.
That's kind of like a cosmic conscious principle of orientation, right? Like that's the individuation of the self.
And then you could read this Genesis bit as like dividing the ordered from the disordered.
Yes.
I think it's also acknowledging the disorder as an aspect of the order itself.
Because the water was there first, and then there's like all the differentiation came out of that. Like the water is non-dualistic and contains everything.
Like you
whereas God is creating the dualities of our world.
Like you understand disorder as a function of conscious order.
Yes.
Okay, so I largely just wanted to do this Genesis parallel comparison because I'm a nerd for Egypt, what can I say? But the main takeaway from this is that Genesis does tell the same divine autogenesis story that's found in the texts of ancient Egypt and other cultures. This is the coming forth from or arising into ordered creation out of the pre-creation void. So I like to think of this as the auto-manifestation observation of the ineffable divine. Of, into, and within itself, a causal reflection which activates the separation of the light from the darkness. This self-perception orders or activates receiving its selfhood or foundation, Ma'at. Ma'at causes infinite nothingness to create into infinite somethingness. For me, this draws a kind of parallel as a union of the observed and the unobserved into somethingness, and it reminds me of what we can witness in the two-slit experiment in quantum physics.
Oh, we're actually going to talk about the two-slit experiment in this episode.
So this is a perception-based activation of causal distinction, which I like to think of in the two-slit experiment as a microcosmically mirrored expression of this same autogenerative principle. In my own thought experiments, I tend to imagine this kind of unacknowledged into acknowledged behavioral statehood as a kind of creative prompt, akin to that of the divine autogenesis, unmanifestation to manifestation.
Creation through acknowledgement? This is why it's sometimes a bad idea to get too involved with something you find unpleasant. It tends to invite more of it.
I think we kind of intuitively understand this when we speak of the value of composure compared to losing your shit in an argument, so to speak, or as people say, crashing out. That's not to say everything you find unpleasant isn't something to come into creation. So I think that's like a whole other thing that maybe gets elucidated once we get through this. But if I didn't point it out already, I do have to point it out now. The Egyptians referred to chaos as Isfet, or what we would think of as chaos as being Isfet. So if Isfet were a program and you were to run that program, bringing it into creation, you might think it would destroy Ma'at. And that is what it says in the Kemetic texts. The main problem of leaving this idea as such a flat statement like that is that as soon as anything is created, it's still brought into creation through Ma'at. So how does that work? We see that there isn't a differentiation yet between chaos or order in the swirling of the pre-creation nothingness source, the primordial soup. Does that apply to life? Whether it makes sense or not, the primordial soup is perfectly chaotic, perfectly inert, and perfectly harmonious as the source, the infinite, the divine. After all, it's called the waters of Nun and not the waters of Isfet. And this is kind of important. So what's the difference between Nun and Isfet? Within that primordial soup, the chaos itself is perfectly Ma'at in its nature of nothingness. There's no definitive difference between Ma'at and Isfet yet, as they are not yet born, and they're only brought forth from it. So the ordering of chaotic potentiality into existence is then carried forward through Ma'at. So in a nutshell, all that is created is brought forth because of Ma'at, from Ma'at, and consequently into and alongside the Ma'at that is existence. So we've arrived at the true nature of all reality, which is Ma'at. This true nature actually includes chaos, Isfet, as well as all other adversarial elements. So it actually makes more sense not to think of Isfet in so much as chaos, in the terms that we described as inert before, but more so as meaning dissonance. The many ways in which this dissonance can be expressed would actually be embodied in the same Neteret that Abrahamic religions would later designate as demons. Neteret that easily fall into that adversarial category due to their natures becoming more more easily destructive or dissonant. That said, even the unexpressed, unacknowledged, or seemingly void areas of life are subject to Ma'at. Isfet isn't said to be the state of the primordial waters. It's explained as a natural counterpart to Ma'at that is necessary for life. This is the philosophical idea of evil existing so that good may be recognized. But it is also more than that. Adversarial elements were understood as being necessary for life, though we as humans seem to have a particularly difficult time figuring out how to keep those adversarial elements in check for ourselves. So for example, in music, not all notes are sharps or flats, but different key signatures and different compositions can and do still use these notes, the sharps or flats, harmoniously. So for the musicians in our audience, you might think of E flat major and C minor as relative keys. You don't really need to know any of this to get it, though. Isfet and Ma'at, as comparative dissonance and harmony, are just naturally opposed dualities, where Ma'at brings order and Isfet brings destruction. Yet Isfet is bound to exist within Ma'at in every way that it manifests. So this means that these opposing forces exist simultaneously and through Ma'at. The human connection via free will is the balancing of these forces. So you do actually see free will being brought into the equation in ancient Kemetic texts. Balancing these forces was explained as steps to unite your Ka and Ba souls, your vital force and your free will in harmony. So like, if you want this like musical comparison of dissonance, it'd be like playing C minor and C sharp minor at the same time, for example.
Okay.
So if the music references are lost, like I said, that's okay, because the main takeaway from this, it doesn't require you to know any music theory.
Oh, thank God.
This understanding basically describes Isfet not as a primordial inert force of chaos, but more as a active destructive force imposed on the creation. As a byproduct of the creation itself. So Isfet is portrayed as being connected to expression, and thus was explicitly tied to your free will. It's tied to like the active principles. So balancing this free will of the created, it's a concept that lands us square in thelemic territory once again, where we can understand why do what thou wilt doesn't equate to do what you want.
If it isn't little Alex, long time no video, Drew. How goes? It's impossible. I don't believe it.
This reminds me of the evil god in The Lord of the Rings. Wasn't that the whole bit?
What? There's no evil gods in the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, in the Silmarillion. How does it all go wrong?
Morgoth is not a god. He's just an angel.
Oh, what the f*** ever? What, gods, angels, well, what happens in the Silmarillion, where all the evil comes from?
Made the song with all the other gods, angels, to create the material world, but Morgoth was a rebellious angel, and he put a discord into the tune.
I'd like to make myself believe.
Because he
That
thought he
created
was
evil.
f***ing the star of the show with the guitar, because the guitar always has to be the loudest. He was like, everyone's like, you can't hear the fucking singer, man. Nobody wants to hear that shit.
And Morgoth, you know how like Sauron made the ring to like make his power over other people on Middle Earth? Well, the ring for Morgoth was Middle Earth itself. He put his power and his essence and his evil into the very world. That's why he's like super powerful at the beginning of the Silmarillion, but by the end he's one-on-oneing an elf and gets his ankle cut and permanently like has a limp.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
So it's so Tolkien knew about this on some level, at least.
I'm sure that Tolkien was very versed in esoteric ideas.
So this connection to free will, it's not lost in Kemetic text where this is played out in the various myths. Apep, the serpent of chaos, who is the personification of Isfet, is described as the umbilical cord of the sun god Ra.
So what does that mean?
So using Egyptian terms, the pure embodiment of destructive forces, known as Apep, is a byproduct referred to in some texts as the umbilical cord of the pure embodiment of life-giving light, and that's symbolized by Ra, the sun. So simply put, Apep is symbolized as a kind of waste product of the conscious created and creating divinity, Ra. He's bound to lurk in the extension of the abyss as Nun is stretched into creation.
You pull me up with your strong arms.
We find this abyss symbolically existing within the body of Osiris as the Duat. So Apep lives in the Duat. His potentiality is a threat to all of life, including the individual body it exists within as potential.
Maybe I'll deal with it the way I dealt with Curly Jefferson.
Does that make sense?
But umbilical cords nourish neonates.
They're still in the mother. So Nefertem.
It's just confusing to think of, the destructive forces as feeding the light or the good raw. You know what I mean?
Well, they're not separate prior to creation. They're only separated in the process of creation as distinctly different.
And then after creation, it's seen as like a byproduct, you said, like
Yeah.
waste.
So the Dweller of the Abyss, described as a result of free will, exists within every individual. This is largely why knowing the inharmonious expressions of Neteru and their righteous Ma'at expressions and applications was so important for the journey through the Duat, or underworld.
You know me. What about the boat times?
It depicts the harmonious embodiment of life, including that of the adversarial Neteru. So since we're familiar with Kemetic texts, we know that Set slays Apep, lest Apep, the embodiment of pure destruction, comes to fruition. Ultimately, that would be breaching the horizon and killing that which gives life itself.
Maybe I'll deal with it the way I dealt with Curly Jefferson.
Obviously, no bueno.
That's why you need to eat the placenta.
It's why you keep the baby and not the umbilical cord.
You have to eat it.
So here we find that the adversarial nature of life itself is given the greatest feat. Set is actually meant to protect the life-giving principles, symbolized as Ra, from the forces of absolute destruction, Apep. It's like, if you don't eat, you don't poop. And if you don't poop, you die.
Easy.
If you don't Ra, you don't make Apep. If you don't slay the Apep, you die. So this is the Ma'at application of the adversary, otherwise called Set or Seth. It's kind of like how you can't hold your own head underwater to drown yourself because your own Setian nature protects your consciousness and your existence.
Is this why Satanists say Satan loves you?
I mean, that's one example of Set in Ma'at.
You must love me exactly as I love you.
Well, I don't love you.
Anything Setian or adversarial that embodies Isfet in favor of life-giving principles discovers that Ma'at dictates that it too will die if it follows through to its natural conclusion. So this is why it was reiterated time and time again that despite having necessary destructive principles, Set was not allowed to be the king. And we brought up Cancer as a prime example of this last week.
I think this is how Tim feels about communism.
All right, that's it. Off to the gulag for you. You think about what you done did.
From a general scientific lens, I think we can relate the potential for manifestation to something like the many unseen or unknown forces of natural laws. Even recessive genetics that lay unknown or unexpressed, sometimes for countless generations or millennia, fall into this category of unexpressed or unknown potentials, in my opinion. They are still Ma'at, even in their unexpressed state, when the active expression of such becomes manifest. Whether it's ultimately helpful or harmful becomes another matter of Ma'at, or Isfet, destruction. Not all recessive genes are destructive, for example, but some are. Not all thoughts are destructive, but they certainly have the potential to be.
Can you think of other examples of unexpressed destructive forces that we know in life? Negative thoughts, dark matter, energy theory?
I can think of some examples like this. Solid rocket fuel, calories in general, a loaded gun, when somebody feels really, really mad.
Full of hate.
So like Mario when she doesn't get tendies.
Now, using this Kemetic lens, should we treat violent thoughts the same way as we treat violent acts?
Not as an absolute, but within yourself you should probably shine a light on it and balance it accordingly. Violent thoughts start out a bit like Apep, so it first harms your own consciousness. If allowed to manifest as Isfet consciously and then acted upon, absolutely I think it would be dubbed an agent of Set or Setian.
An agent of Satan, you mean?
Right, but also that's not how it was viewed in ancient Egypt, so it still had to exist within Ma'at. So like you still had to balance it out and use it within Ma'at. So they are related, but there is also a harmony to the energy math that goes on there, hence a distinction between Apep, Isfet, and Setian principles, even with that overlap. I also think it's also where we find a bunch of Neteru with adversarial qualities appearing in the Duat along that journey. And this is all, overlaps with Goetia. Chaos and destruction are both generally generally considered to be in opposition to Ma'at, but that doesn't excuse them from her laws. So they're still subject to Ma'at, even if they are also necessary for the balance of Ma'at in the first place. Some examples of necessary Isfet as a harmonious destructive force of life would be natural deterioration of cells, fermentation,
And that one's as close as you can get to Bailey's without your eyes getting wet.
or the killing of anything that we eat, whether it's a plant or an animal. It's also the natural reaction of our immune systems in the destruction of viruses that attack us. Antibodies would be considered the body's natural method of learning how to adopt such a force of Isfet in a way that is harmonious to the collective body. The embodiment of this actualized would make it a Setian principle. So in these ways, it would not be called Isfet in so much as they would be embodied by a larger concepts or Neteru, and as such would not be inherently destructive, like in a bad way. So for example, Set is a god of destruction, but he does have harmonious applications which affect life positively, even though destruction itself is not life-giving. And so this is why we see that he's considered infertile symbolically. Once Isfet is embodied in nature, it would be considered a Setian principle. If it actively destroys Ma'at, then it is self-defeated by Setian principles, like cancer.
This exact thing Heka's talking about is actually reflected in biology itself, because the tendency of the body to remove bad or cancer-causing cells is called apoptosis. It's named after Apophis. Google describes it as thus.
And Apophis is another name for Apep.
It's true.
Quote, apoptosis is a form of programmed, energy-dependent cellular suicide, type 1 cell death, in multicellular organisms that eliminates damaged, unwanted, or aged cells without causing inflammation. It maintains homeostasis, manages immune cell populations, and removes potentially cancerous cells. Dysregulation leads to diseases like cancer. That means that you have too little apoptosis going on. Or neurodegeneration. That means too much is going on. Unquote. I need me some of this. This is really healthy for you. A lot of times, if you're not in a fasted state, this doesn't happen. If you're constantly like eating food all day, you're not getting apoptosis to happen. So your body's never in a cleaning state. It's basically self-cleaning mode. And we have to have it because like if our cells get damaged, as a multicellular organism, your cells have an inbuilt like death function if they're not functioning properly. But sometimes, you know, like with, especially with cancer, that gets overridden. So this allows your immune cells to go through and kind of comb through the garbage out of your own system. Very healthy for you.
So it's not necessarily about fasting because of attachments. It's about fasting for health. And so fasting and praying actually do have a harmony to be reached.
Absolutely. And it actually makes you more mentally aware. Like people claim that they feel more meditative or in touch with God or nature when they are fasted.
And fasting just plays into that idea of stillness or vacantness because you're not eating anything. That's returning back to the source. So there you go. Fasting and praying really does help. Did think it was interesting you have too little Set, cancer takes over the body because that's like Apep taking over. And then if Set takes too much control, you become mentally disabled. This reminded me of how Heka says that Set cannot be king. So yes, he has to kill the cancer cells, but he also kills nerve cells if you let him go too far. I thought that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Setian principles overlap quite a bit actually with Gavura on the Kabbalistic tree of life and the balancing act that it engages with the loving kindness of Chesed. So these two necessarily balance severity and the life-giving collective mercy as polarities to the solar sphere of Tifreth on the middle pillar. So confrontation, knowing them and balancing them is an exercise of Ra's journey through the Duat. That's knowing the harmony of the Isfet, natures of the Neteru, and the slaying of Apep. This is basically knowing when a flat key is harmonious and not dissonant, in a nutshell. I personally relate the Duat to the non-sphere of Da'at.
This is also why the solar sphere of Tifreth is associated with vitality and life as much as it is harmony. You need a balance to be vital. It makes sense why you would see the king crowned by both Set and Horus, respectively, like in Egyptian hieroglyphs and stuff, probably representing something close in alignment to what we're talking about now.
I mean, they are called the two Sekem, or the two powers.
Which is why there's two halves to this episode. And if you'd like to hear that part, you're gonna have to visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 will not only get you the extended version of this episode, or the second half, but you'll get the second half of every single one of our episodes. That goes back almost 7 years now. But not only that, I'll send you a 5x5 high-quality vinyl sticker for our Big Bunny Baphomet cover art, and the secret keys to our Discord server where you can talk to us about Egyptian mythology and ask for clarification about any of this if it was confusing at any point.
Also, you can join our Dope as Socks Club.
It's true. And if you listen in, you're going to hear more about Set. That's Satan.
By modern standards.
I'm going to bring up Freemasons just because I can. There's going to be the two-slit experiment.
Dude, we always talk about that.
Thoth comes up. That's the bird and the
Kephri.
word. And Kephri. All the important deities to Satanism and Hermeticism, which is useful if you're out there in the field to eat carrots and shoot lasers.
Pew pew pew.
Pew, pew, pew.
Pew, pew, pew.